All right, let's get our Facebook groups going. See if we got the Facebook groups 1 and 2. All right, welcome in. It is Wednesday morning, time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, joined by Scott Kennedy. Scott, hour number 2. Hopefully we'll be out of here in about half an hour. We're giving the little guy eggs and broccoli, I think, this morning, so I got to make sure I'm there for that with the allergies and the also the cleanup afterwards. So it's fun times out here. Also, probably got to suck some snot out before that too, since got a cold going on.
Broncos for breakfast. Good morning, everybody. And
Here.
Nick is enjoying yes, Nick, you'll be sick for 2 years. Just go ahead and get used to it.
Yeah. I'm already sick in the head, so might as well physically have it too. I mean, it's been really trying to, consistently work out here because I got goals on big mountains at some point. So I've been lifting 4 days a week and trying to wake up. And you think the 5 a.m. wake ups are early, Scott? I've been waking up at 4 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays to get up and lift before the baby's up. Because I'll tell you, I mean, like trying to do it when he is nap time or whatever, and then like constantly up and down and cooling down and having to restretch should take like 3 hours to do an hour set. So we're trying to figure it out here. Yeah, trying to get better.
It always gets better. It's good now. It gets better. It just keeps getting better until, like I said, you'll blink twice and you'll be kicking them out of the house. So enjoy it. It.
Trying to be present, like being present with the chat here. We got David Youngkin says, morning, everyone. Jeremy's in the house, says, morning, boys. Feels like a lot have improved our roster from last season, but depth is a concern. Cornerback 2 is going to get a lot of balls, so that needs to be solid. Yeah, Scott, we talk about the cornerback position, much like the offensive line position, where the sum is equal to the weakest link of the chain, right? So with Surtain out there, McMillan looks really good so far. Cornerback 2 on the boundary when you're in nickel is going to get a lot of targets, and if that player is not up to snuff, it's going to be something that's schematically frustrating for Broncos fans all season.
Yeah, last year we saw at the beginning of the season Damari Mathis get targeted, and it was like, okay, we can go here. It's like you said, it's the weakest link on this. It's like, where is that guy? Because I can go that way every single time until they adjust. So yeah, having the strength across the backside of your secondary is good. Improving the pass rush will solve some of that too.
I mean, Scott, we're both on the same page as far as better pass rushers leads to better secondary. But you want good players across the board there. Always good coming in here. Michael Ronquillo with the support. Thank you so much. Drop a thumbs up on the way in as well, folks. If you can't be like Michael dropping in the financial support here. Says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. I do apologize for my nasally voice. Obviously, like we talked about, dealing with that cold. So I'm already self-conscious of being a little nasally, Scott, but this is a different level. So hopefully it's not too bad on your guys' end. Alberto's in the house. Great to see you. Morning to you. See String Guys here. Michael Evans. Awesome to see you. Hope you're doing well. Monica's in the house. Hey, guys. Troy Franklin, I hope, isn't a letdown for us. Your thoughts? 4th round pick, wide receiver. They traded up for him. I mean, so far he's a letdown, but the book's not completely written on him. When you're talking about a day 3 pick at wide receiver, your variance is wide. He could end up being a good wide receiver 3. He could end up being off the roster in a year. You have a wide scope there. I was always a little skeptical, but when talks like some teams had a day 2 grade on this guy. Well, why didn't he get drafted by those teams then, right? Fell to the day 3 of the draft. So questions there. We'll see. He's a slender player. It might take him a little bit. The route running at Oregon was not very advanced what they were asking the guys. He needs to work on putting on some NFL muscle. So questions there. He's not the wide receiver who's disappointed me the most this offseason, though. That would be Marvin Mims, who has had a golden opportunity to run away with a spot. And the wide receiver 3 is still wide open, Scott. I mean, Reynolds hasn't really been impressive. You're relying on Tim Patrick, which, makes me tense to do. I mean, good for him. Really pulling for him. But
right now he's wide receiver 2.
I know.
Which is great. I mean, I love it. That's
for him.
What exactly. But I mean, if he's playing the capabilities, if we just flush out the last 2 years and go with what we've seen so far this camp, you're happy with Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
Flat out. Now, there's always that caveat in the background that he's missed the last 2 years with injury, and it's scary because he has, I hate to say injury prone, but he has been prone to injury through the course of his career.
Yeah, and he's older too. 31, 32 years old, I believe, which for he came out older, right? He feels like he hasn't been in the league that long, but he's not like Vele, who drafted at 26, 27. But I think Tim Patrick's over 30 now. Maybe he is just 30. But
Birth date 11/23/93, so he's 30. He'll be 31 in November.
31. So there you go. Yeah, that's the dreaded number there for a lot of skill position players.
Yeah, but
30.
not big wide receivers. Not a guy. He wasn't a guy that was reliant on Twitch to begin with. Certainly isn't going to be coming off of an injury.
Yeah.
That his best shouldn't be much different than when he was 25. It's theoretically speaking, if he's 100%.
Yeah, if he's 100%, that's just the age coupled with the
more.
injuries.
It's more of the wear and tear and that stuff. What they say? It's not the age, it's the mileage. I'm not worried about him being 30. I'm worried about the mileage that he's got on those joints and tendons and all that kind of stuff.
Like a car, show me the Carfax. Oh, there's 2 car crashes in your history there. That's hoping for the best there. Also, just a little bit more Tim Patrick talk. If you recall, not this offseason, but the last offseason, the Broncos kind of were aggressive pursuing of, oh my gosh, his name's Alan Lazard, who's a big slot type. A lot of people think slot. They think Wes Welker. They think Brandon Stokely, the little small guy. Hunter Renfrow, right? But a lot of teams have started to shift away from that, and they're playing the big slot, a guy who can block out there, a Cooper Kupp,
Kyle Pitts.
It's there's been a formational change there. There's just so much people with a slot machine ideal in their head, but Patrick, his physicality, his size. I mean, Michael Thomas, right, did a killing in the slot for the Saints out there. So we saw the Broncos did try to target a big slot type in Alan Lazard. Maybe that's a role with Patrick coming forward. I think this team is going to have a hard time creating explosive plays, Scott, down the field, the vertical base of the offense, just because it's not just questions with Bo Nix. We haven't seen him push the ball yet. And that part of that's defense, part of that's, can't go broke taking a profit. But I just don't know where the explosive playmakers are also on this team. And that's something that you can live with Patrick being big slot, to Cortland Sutton as well. But where are the explosives coming from? You would hope it's Marvin Mims. The screen game is going to be a part of that as well for the Broncos, of course. Sean Payton, we've seen that. I mean, I think hopefully McLaughlin can be better in the pass game and create some explosives there. But that's my biggest question mark on the whole for this team. Not individual players or anything, but on the offensive side, explosives are so valuable. How are they getting them in this offense with the personnel they have? I think it's going to be hard.
You're going to see a lot of stacked boxes to begin with, for sure. You're going to see a lot of more aggressive defenses, and this is not a hot take, but you're going to see a lot more aggressive defenses with pressure and with guys closer to the line of scrimmage than you've seen in the preseason.
Yeah,
you're going to see more stacked boxes, more press coverage. Can you get behind me? Because I'll let you have the underneath stuff. I want to see guys in the open as I'm evaluating them in the preseason. We're going to start scheming in the regular season.
Yeah. One thing I will say is I think Nix has shown pretty darn good processing and anticipation that in the Sean Payton offense, he's going to give his playmakers a chance to make one guy miss, and then it's, 10, 15 yards extra on top of that. But it's all in theory right now. We'll see what it looks like when teams are actually playing number ones and actual defensive schemes out there versus, cover 4 off coverage consistently. Troy coming in, $9.99. Thank you so much, Troy. Troy's one of our superstars, always coming in. Hope we can see you at the meet and greet this year. He says, hey guys, which of our players are most likely to be traded instead of waived? Like Albert O, no prediction, but most likely P. Ryan, Patrick, Wallace. Thank you. I could see maybe you're listing guys who are older and I think have less value on trades. And I've looked more of the Malik Reed types, the guys in like the last year, their rookie contract where you can get like a pick swap and kind of move up a little bit. So maybe somebody like a Damari Mathis out there. I know you have the cornerback depth out there, but Chris Abrams-Drain has played pretty well. You still have, of course, Levi Wallace as well. Maybe somebody would give you a 5th round pick for Mathis and a 6th or a Mathis and a 7th. I mean, those are kind of the guys where if I was a general manager, I'd be looking to trade for those types of the young guys who maybe in a different scheme, different situation can ascend. So maybe a Mathis. God, I can't really think of any other valuable tradable pieces. Scott,
Well,
I guess
they're there aren't really a ton of valuable trading pieces. And Troy, appreciate the support that you show all of our shows, especially us this morning. I don't differentiate a 2-year down the line, 7th round, 6th round pick swap from being cut. And when we talk about Albert O, the initial report was he was cut. It's like, oh, we haven't done it yet. We're going to see if we can do something that really doesn't matter. Maybe we can get a 2025. This was last year, 2 years down the road, 6 for a 7th, and for me, that's not a hell of a lot different than being cut. So making those type of predictions is really hard. Who isn't going to make this roster? But I think, what about Jarrett Stidham?
I was just,
of the guys I was kind of expecting. We share a brain on so many things. What about Jarrett Stidham? For a backup quarterback, he's cheap. He's pretty cheap for a backup quarterback, and that's what he is. Again, we've romanticized this Jarrett Stidham into being something he's not. This is his 5th year in the league. He's got 5 starts in the NFL, 5 starts in the NFL. I mean, he's a career backup, which is fine. You need one of those guys. But if you can get something from that and cut $5 million off of your salary cap, that I might be able to move forward to next year. And I do like the idea, Troy, here of Pirine. Pirine has some value. I think you need Patrick right now. I think Tim Patrick, we want to talk about all of these. Some of these guys could end up playing on other teams. That's fine. But right now you've got Cortland Sutton and then a bunch of number 3s. You need your wide receivers right now too. Going back to Monica and then get back to it. You hit on it, Nick. Monica asked, about, the disappointment of Troy Franklin. Well, it depends on your perspective. If you buy into the, oh my God, he's the next Puka Nacua coming in, then yeah, you're going to be disappointed. If you look at him for what he was, which was a 4th round draft pick, you don't expect 4th round draft picks to contribute in year 1, except on special teams. Period. Anything, I mean, at wide receiver, at the premium positions, anything you get out of them is gravy, is a bonus. Well, what about? I'm not playing whataboutism with y'all today. I'm talking 90% here, not the 10. So is Troy Franklin not being a contributor to this team? Is that a huge surprise? First off, let's let it see it happen. But if you're not contributing in preseason as a rookie, you're probably, and if there's an injury we don't know about, probably not going to just turn it on, September. Think of it like a redshirt year for a 169-pound 6'2" guy and a 4th round pick. So is he a bust? No, he's a 4th round wide receiver. Let's give him some time and let's put our expectations to normalcy, which is a premium player, a premium position picked in the 4th round isn't being counted on, isn't expected to contribute to a team that has any kind of depth at all.
Yeah, that's a few more names did want to toss out here. Could we see Troy Franklin flipped for, getting a 7th round pick for him? I mean, I know you traded up from the 4th, but rather than subjecting him to waivers, which seems most likely right now, Scott, given his lack of special teams ability, maybe he's somebody you could flip. And there was one more name that I was going to talk. Oh, the dark horse. I don't think it'll happen. It's probably more of if the wheels are kind of falling off and the team is not looking very good, then maybe you move them. But one of those starting edges that is set to hit free agency at the end of the year. Nick Benito looks pretty good. I know he had the back injury. I think it was back, but he looks to be, he's playing now, so he must be okay. And Ellis has looked really good out there as well. Those guys are under contract for multiple seasons still in Denver. But you have Browning and Cooper set to hit free agency. The big one here for me with that is, if you had like a 5th edge rusher that was like really showing up and turning out, then maybe it's more of a conversation. DeAndre Tillman, some flashes here or there. Thomas Incoom, they liked him enough to bring him back and activate him a few times last year. So maybe a dark horse would be a Jonathan Cooper or a Baron Browning. But I think that is far more of a conversation to have. What is it? Week 7, week 8? If like the team is 2-5, 2-6, 3-5. or I don't even know when the bye is at this point. But not looking like a contender. You're probably going to lose one of those guys anyway. Then you might have that conversation. But right now, Scott, talking about the theme of the show, and thank you again, Troy, for the super chat, keeping the lights on, making sure that it's always worth waking up to hang out with you guys at 5 a.m. or whatever I'm doing on these Mondays and Wednesdays. But the support really helps, especially with Chad, not getting on us. But edge rusher, the edge rushing room. I'm getting a lot of flack on Twitter. Scott, I don't know if you've seen this, but I had like a long thread about, Bo Nix playing very well, meeting expectation, why there's reasons for optimism. There's still questions, blah, blah, blah. Like I keep saying, it's a pop quiz, not a final. We haven't had every question asked. But I listed the positional rankings for the Broncos' first round overall pick in 2025, and I listed edge number 1. A lot of people push back at me on that, and I understand why, because I think actually the way it's looked through preseason and the way it looks on paper, if your second string is Ellis and Benito, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for a second string. Now, I really would argue you are missing that difference maker. No, Zach Allen maybe is a guy you look at and like, okay, we have to scheme up to make sure he doesn't beat us. But at edge, Browning hasn't shown to be that guy. Cooper hasn't shown to be that guy. They're serviceable starters. I mean, ideally, maybe even second string guys. When you talk about 4 deep, it's a pretty good room depth-wise.
Here's the thing. You mentioned when you said when you've got a 2 deep of, I'm not sure who you're going to say when you talk about who the second team is. You're like, when you got a 2 deep, when a second team, we know that the penciled in as the starters are Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not upper tier edge rushers in the NFL. Okay. So it's good where you can get guys where you've got depth, but you don't have exceptional talent. So that's what you're speaking of. And then you got 2 guys coming out of contract. So is it a number 1 priority? Going into this season, I think offensive tackle is their number 1 priority if we want to start looking at it, because I don't have Bowles back.
It's OT or edge.
Yeah, if Bowles comes back, okay, that's fine. But it just feels like if you were going to re-sign Bowles, you would have redone it this year. Yeah. You obviously showed you weren't afraid to redo some contracts, Mike McGlinchey and Zach Allen, to free up some money. And this is a guy, or get rid of a guy to save some money, who had almost an identical contract in Justin Simmons. So maybe they've already got something worked out. You never know, because it's been awfully quiet around that front that you could have saved $16 million moving on from Garrett Bowles. It's been awfully quiet from all camps. Nobody's asking about Garrett Bowles. Hey, Sean, what's up with Garrett Bowles? We'll get to that when we get to that. So offensive tackle for me, but no, there's not the guy at edge, but you've got 4 pros. Mm-hmm. You think you got at least 3. We'll see on Jonah Ellis. Everybody's going gaga over preseason. We'll see on Jonah Ellis.
Yeah. I don't think it's fair to expect him to be a superstar when I'm talking about, challenging for all pro, and outside of quarterback, the positions where I think you need to hunt for stars are receiver and pass rusher, hence why they get paid like they do, right? Those true like weight players, gravity players on the roster at premium positions. But edge is up there for me. I listed edge 1, offensive tackle 2, Scott, wide receiver 3, and then cornerback 4. I mean, all the value positions, who would have thought from Nick, right? But right now, I think just talking about the strengths of this team, you have 4 guys who I think project as number 2s or number 3s in the league. And that makes that a strength on the roster this season in multiple ways.
Real quick on this, because again, I accuse us of getting tunnel vision. Okay. Come off season, we get into our own little bubbles, and every free agent pick we make is going to be the guy. Every draft pick is going to be the guy, and every young player is going to be step up to the next level, and every injured player is going to be healthy. That's just where we are.
Yeah.
Now, this hasn't taken in effect because these position rankings from ESPN were released last year, but they're looking over the entire NFL. So what I like to say is, do they know the Denver Broncos as well as we do? No, they of course they don't. Do they know the Pittsburgh Steelers better than we do? Probably. Do they know the Washington Commanders better than we do? Probably. What do you think the Denver Broncos position rankings for edge are in the NFL according to ESPN?
I think they're going to be pretty low because they don't have any superstars and they have a lot of question marks. So they're probably somewhere like 25th,
28.
26th, 28. Yep.
28.
Yep.
That's your outside perception. Now, if it's 28, may or may not be. But again, is there a guy that just, is there a difference maker in that bunch? Because that's what you need at the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we've had 3 years of Benito and Cooper. I mean, of Cooper and Browning. Browning sometimes, but no, not over the course of a 17-game season. Cooper, no, he's a solid pro. He'd be a great number 3.
Yep.
He'd be a great number 3 to come in. But, your hope here is because I go too deep, I can rotate and keep fresh.
Yep.
And if I've got, let's do Madden, y'all, okay? If I've got 475s, but I can rotate them, they're still 99% fresh in the fourth quarter, while this guy's 80% fresh and he's dropped down. Well, my guys are still playing at a level of 75. That's where you're hoping that the tenacity can pay off because you have some depth. It's not exceptional talent, but there's not a drop off there either, which also means you're not as susceptible to injury.
I was just going to make that point. Very high floor in that edge room as well. So it's weird. It feels like talking outside of both sides of my mouth, Scott, saying like the edge room is a strength, but it's also my number one priority going into the draft next season. Part of that's because historical data say if you really want a true difference maker at edge, it's probably going to take a first round pick based on probabilities. What about Max Crosby? Oh, well, as you like to say, give me a small enough sample size, I can prove anything. But edge, I think, is a strength. And I also want to toss in, now one there's been lauded a lot. I think it's going to be good this season, but I don't think it's going to be great. And that's the interior defensive line room. I think, again, they have useful pieces out here, but I got to say, I know there's been some in the Broncos analysis world that like really praise DJ Jones. And I watched him last season. It just feels like he can occupy some blockers sometimes, but I didn't see a lot of impact plays or displacement pretty often. I think that he could be a surprise cut at the end of the day. I mean, a team would pick him up. He's a useful player, but not to the contract. We were both a little bit surprised that he was kept and there wasn't much conversation there. So DJ Jones, fine. I think Roach could probably replace him. Same skill set. I think Allen and John Franklin Myers are going to be very valuable, especially. But I do have questions about the Blackson. Just I feel like there's still probably like a weight piece away from that unit being really well rounded. But I do think compared to last season,
there you go.
And it's probably the defensive. I have questions about the defense, but the edge rushers plus the interior defensive line will be the backbone of the Broncos defense this year, in theory.
It'll be, again, the bar was set so low last year that there was nowhere to go but up. And again, Zach Allen is a beast. I mean, he's a legit number 1. You guys were talking yesterday. It was like, okay, in a redraft, I might probably have Zach Allen, my second pick behind Pat Surtain. I'm like, what are you talking about?
People,
not even close, man.
I'm people who cover the Broncos and talk about it. They will talk about Browning, Cooper, Benito.
No way.
Alex Singleton.
Absolutely no way. Let's look at the paychecks.
I'm with you.
No way. It's
I'm with
Pat
you.
Surtain. It's Zach Allen. It's drop off.
Yes, I'm 100% with you. I'll tell you though, people in the sphere don't talk about him that way, which is confused. I think it's maybe because Singleton's a little bit more personality and making
look at the people who are writing the checks, and Zach Allen has the second most guaranteed money on this team, and they extended
for good
it.
reason.
Now, might not necessarily be the best way to do it because number 1 was Russell Wilson and number 2 was Mike McGlinchey, but Zach Allen he's legit. He's young and he's talented and he's in a premium position. End of.
Yeah.
It's the end of the conversation. It's number 2. Your number 2 most valuable defensive player is Zach Allen, without question.
I'm 100% with you. When you look at the defense, who has a chance to make a Pro Bowl and get Pro Bowl votes? I have a hard time right now on paper looking at it. I think the edge rushers are solid, but getting Pro Bowl votes, there's some superstars at edge, real difference makers. I don't think you have any of those. They're good, useful players who are going to make all those guys I expect to get good second contracts, which is good job because they're not, none of them are first round picks, right? It's second round, but Benito's the highest investment there at pick 63 or 64, whatever he was. And
Can you get $10 million next year?
What was that?
Can Browning get $10 million next year?
Browning could go crazy, have a great season, and then get a big contract because
right now, would you think, based on what you've seen so far, is he a $10 million guy?
Probably not, because he's just missed too many games. And I feel like, I don't know what the Odd Sharks, whoever does the injury probability rankings, probably would have him at like a 50 or 60% chance of missing multiple games this year, given how much he's missed in his career. So that would make me say he's hard to bet on. But if he has a healthy season, I mean, he could definitely get 10 million because teams
How far do you go down? How many guys in the NFL have $10 million or more average salaries?
For the edge rusher or total?
For edge.
Oh, man, it looks like a lot. Granted, they're kind of mixing in some hybrid players.
Just guess, because you say, could he be a $10 million guy? Where does that put
20,
him? Let's say
25 players?
There's 64 edge rushers, starting edge rushers, so to speak. There's 42.
42?
There's 42.
Edge rusher.
Is he a $10 million edge rusher? Is he in the average? I think he's about average.
He'll probably get it then, yeah.
So it would be about 32
yeah.
for Benito. I think Cooper's going to be in that $8 million range next year. And I think Browning has a chance to, let me see, if I say he's 32 coming in about average, well, it's Chase Young at 13.
Yeah.
$13 million is what you pay for a league average pass edge rusher right now is 13.
Crazy. I mean, that edge and wide receiver, man, those markets have exploded. And speaking of weaknesses on this team, I got to go with they said the defensive line will be the strength of the defense.
Oh, going back to, we talked about edge. What does ESPN say about the defensive line?
Probably 24th.
This one's going to shock you.
15th?
11. For interior defensive line, they have Denver Broncos 11 for interior defensive line.
That does shock me.
It's higher than I was expecting. They've made big improvements. We've talked up what's the single biggest improvement on this team. It's not, knock on wood, quarterback, at least perception-wise. And again, I'll go to my grave saying this. The overall numbers at the end of the season for Russell Wilson weren't that bad last year. It's the best you've had in Denver in a while. And if Bo Nix has a 26-9 end of season numbers, forget the aesthetics of it, he'll be a favorite for Rookie of the Year. The interior defensive line was poor last year. Zach Allen took some time to get going, and once he did, he was a beast. DJ Jones struggled. And after that, you were just throwing bodies out there. I mean, replacement level players, honestly. And you've got improvement. I think Malcolm Roach is better than anybody except Zach Allen from what you had last year. DJ Jones, I like DJ Jones, but what I'm saying is he played at a poor level.
Yeah.
I expect a lot more. I think the Broncos expect a lot more from DJ Jones. He's going to bounce back just because there's going to be better players around him, and you're going to see more out of him.
As far as weaknesses go, to me, linebacker and safety look to be pretty concerning. If Singleton's been everywhere, now granted it's preseason, but he's been solid. But Barton, I think, is going to be fine. I don't expect Barton, Griffith, Stranad to play as well as we had from Josie Jewell the last few seasons as an all-around linebacker. So I think linebacker is a weakness. And then safety, I mean, you got your number one guy hurt, missing time in Jones. What's he going to look like? I mean, you have a lot of wandering kind of players out there playing roles right now. Devon Key, Keydron Smith. I know that a lot of Broncos country likes PJ Locke, and there's been some good moments here or there, but there's a reason that he keeps signing for, very little money to keep coming back to Denver. There's not a big market for him. There just isn't. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I know that a couple years ago I got filleted for being like, why are we talking so much about a third string safety? You like to have a PJ Locke on this roster, but he's kind of we need a guy right now. I'll pick you. That's kind of how I perceive it, but I'm not just picking here. Diamond Rattler coming in. Love you guys. Glad you're here. Glad you're here, Diamond. Hope you're doing well.
And it's a shillelagh.
Shillelagh?
It's a shillelagh. You get shillelagh'd.
I got
You said fillet-laid.
Oh,
We're going
Whatever.
fishing and we're gonna fillet Nick later.
Don't do that. Yeah, please don't. Or do. I don't know.
No, I love it. It made me smile.
Uh,
And thank you. Love you too, Diamond Rattler. Certainly appreciate you. Going back along the same theme, I think the Denver, if I'm going in places to fix, like, okay, how do we fix this team? I got $10 million. How do I fix this team? It takes me a long time to get to inside linebacker. It really does. It's like there's so many more things that I would want to address first, but keeping with the same thing about outside looking in, inside linebacker for ESPN and their unit rankings was this is a huge list, so it takes me a second. Let me go to safety first, because safety 31 out of 32 teams. For inside linebackers, they have the Denver Broncos at 26, which I'm like, all right, but again, on the line graph, if you're top 5 at one of these premium positions, you're really good. Mm-hmm. The line between the 10th inside linebacker group and the 25th is probably pretty flat. It's like, who cares? There's not much difference here. These aren't the difference in winning and losing games right here. Now, can you get better there? Yes. Don't get me wrong. But it's not a big concern for me. This isn't why we're losing games or winning games if we end up winning and losing games.
I think the combination of safety and linebacker together could end up losing you some games, just because, again, the spine of the defense, the integrity, the structural soundness relies a lot on that back
Depth
end.
In front of them will help. It'll help.
And that should help a lot. Hopefully no like Lions replicated games last season where you just didn't even have a chance because they were getting so much displacement at the line of scrimmage. But also positively, Scott, I've said this on the few shows, there's no positions that are easier to turn over and find competency in free agency on the defense, in my opinion, than linebacker and safety. Now, the elite linebackers and safeties, they're always going to get paid, but teams let go quality safeties and linebackers every year. And Denver is in a dead cap issue this season, obviously, but that should change next season, the year after. So hopefully this year it's kind of we're trying the shotgun approach here at linebacker outside of Singleton and safety outside of Jones, hopefully. And if somebody steps up, great. We have opportunities galore here at this position. If not, you're going to have the ability to sign competency next offseason or even draft competency day 2, early day 3. I mean, just given how those positions play out.
And you've picked up 100 tackler guys out of free agency pretty quick the last couple of years.
Nothing. Yeah,
Alex Singleton, Cody Barton. Cody Barton was kind of dismissed. Didn't he have 100 tackles last year?
Yeah.
I know Alex Singleton was one of those guys. Yep. Ryan Thompson says, I see Jonas Griffith playing a lot with the second and third group. Do y'all think he's on the bubble or out? I think he's pretty safe as a number 3.
I think so too, but also because he's a special teams guy as well. So he's going to be able.
He's dirt cheap with injuries. Yeah. I mean, he's non-guaranteed, under $1 million. Who are you going to put in his place for a third linebacker? Now, unfortunately, Ryan, we're hoping for more than that.
Yeah.
Jonas Griffith is a specimen, 6'4", 250, can run. You're hoping, okay, let's turn this guy loose. And when he flashed, God, it's been a while already with all the injuries. You're like, okay, I want to see that over 17 games. We just haven't seen it. So it's almost like the opportunity cost that we're not going to get the Jonas Griffith we hoped, but he's worth what we're paying him to do a number 3 linebacker role. We just want him to be 1 or 2. I don't know that that's going to happen for this team.
Yeah. I mean, looking at cuts, linebacker is definitely going to be a spot that Denver's looking at, in my opinion, once the waivers start going through. Keep going, strengths and weaknesses before we get on out of here. I think the offensive line starters are a relative strength, Scott. I mean, they better frickin' be with what you're paying that unit. I think Wattenberg's actually done pretty well. I've been a little bit hit or miss with McGlinchey and Bowles. I think Miners also hasn't been incredible in preseason, but it's just preseason, right? Those offensive line, they should be guys that wear over a game, like on defensive lines, you'd hope. So we'll see. But I think on offense, outside of just Sean Payton, he's like I don't know, not to be, I never did Dungeons and Dragons, but like he's the amulet of deception or something, right? And he gives everybody plus 10 attack points on the offense. because
That
he's
was the
so good.
illusionist class, by the way, for us
Yeah.
geeks.
Okay, I have no idea. But he amplifies everybody's attack by 10. The sword dance in Pokemon. There we go. That's more my side of things. So he amplifies everybody's attack. So Sean Payton in the scheming, I think, is probably your most positive offensive strength because he's going to be able to put you guys in good positions. Maybe even having a young athletic quarterback who making the right decisions. So I'm skeptical to say Bo Nix is a strength yet, but looking at the offense, it's kind of hard to pick things. So I probably say the offensive line is probably the strength of the offense. The weakness, we already talked about it. Just difference makers in the pass catching game. I mean, Cortland Sutton, I think, is a very good number 2 or low end number 1, but you need 2-3 guys who can go out there and get a bucket, especially with how teams are playing so much bracket coverage these days. Who are the guys who are going out there and getting the ball and making something happen? I don't know where that is at Denver. Down the field, you can have Sutton do some stuff. Is Patrick going to be creating after the catch a lot? I don't know. Dulcich, can you trust him to kind of do that thing? Javonte Williams coming off injury? Just the weaponry. I don't think there's many difference makers on the outside.
Real quick on the offensive line, one thing I know I've seen, because it's hard to say against schemes, this blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The mobility looks significantly better on this offensive line. So a full year in the strength and conditioning program and then some is paying off. The mobility and flexibility and your ability to run counters, run outside, run the screen games, I think is going to be much improved, because we had those discussions a lot in the past couple of years. It's like, why don't we run screens very well? Because your linemen can't get out to the hash marks. They're incapable of doing it. I'm seeing a much fitter offensive line group, and sticking with the same theme here, the offensive line as ranked by ESPN is 8th, number 8 in the NFL. Number 1, Detroit, 2, Cleveland, 3, Falcons, 4, Colts, 5, Eagles, 6, Jets, 7, Kansas City, 8, Denver. So you're in good company there.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts here. Overall, I think this offense is looking for a difference maker. I think that Sean will continue to prioritize the lines of scrimmage over those kind of playmakers. The one thing here is a dark horse. I probably lose my mind on here, Scott, but just with how much Denver views the screen game as the abilities to create explosives, how much they want to run the football. It's a really good running back class coming up. Could Sean Payton do what he did 2 times with the Saints and use a first-round pick on a running back? I hope not. I don't see any Saquon Barkleys or Bijan Robinson's the upcoming class. It's a good class. I think you're going to have a lot of running backs come off the board 25 through 60. But that running back spot, Javonte Williams last year of his contract, that's an area of interest for me. But we definitely got to wrap it up because I got to go feed the little guy. Any more thoughts, Scott? I mean, we kind of touched every single spot. I'm leaving the running back off the table. Tight end, definitely a weakness as well on paper. You just have I view tight end very similarly to linebacker and safety. It's not hard to find competency in free agency every year. If you have special, you keep special, but I don't think you have to spend a first-round pick or a crazy contract to get good pieces.
Gatorade Gaming says, I would have never thought Scott was a D&D guy. Yeah, I was a sports geek who was really, really good in math. So I was Billy Bean without the talent, unfortunately. If I had known then what I know now, I would have been one of those guys that got a finance degree somewhere and gotten into analytics and stuff. But things worked out all right. They worked out okay. I was just thinking, speaking of, the D&D, and we talked about illusionist class on Sean Payton. What do y'all think? Neutral evil for the alignment? Does that sound about right? He's not chaotic evil. He's definitely not good. Chaotic neutral, maybe. There's definitely leaning towards the other side of that thing. And String Guy says, I thought Knicks looked pretty good on the screens against Green Bay. Knicks is going to look fantastic on the screen games. And the fact that it doesn't matter what I think, but what I think is your offensive line looks more capable of running them too, which is you can't run them if your offensive line doesn't have the mobility to get there. And you can't run them if your quarterback doesn't have the short passing accuracy in the pocket and size to make those throws. You got them both now, I believe. And it's going to be a staple of your running game. It's going to be an extension of your running game and a huge part of this offense that it has been absent since I've been covering this team, Nick, for 4 years.
One point I will add here to that, Scott, because I do need to get it on out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But the the size you have on the perimeter at wide receiver also is going to make a huge difference in that. It's not just the offensive line, but the combination of Vele, Patrick, Reynolds, Sutton. I mean, you saw Sutton absolutely destroy that defensive back in that Knicks 1st and 20 run. I mean, your ability
maybe
to
why Jerry Jeudy's a Cleveland Brown and we're not seeing Marvin Mims.
Possibly. You're lacking speed and explosiveness and yak, but the size and the blocking on the perimeter should be different for this Broncos team, because right now it looks like your 4 most talented wide receivers are all big. So that'll be interesting to watch in the screen game as well. So gonna wrap it up. Thanks, guys, for coming in here and supporting us. Shout out to Michael Ronquillo, Troy Brewer, Diamond Rattler. You guys killing it. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott's at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, we're over at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe to our show, like on all channels, and share on social media platforms. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you guys for the good comments in here. Always a lot of fun to hanging out in the mornings. We'll be back again Monday morning. If you have any topics or thoughts in here that we didn't touch on, or something you want to dig in a little bit more, hit up Scott and I on Twitter. I myself am way too much on Twitter, but any chance I can have to talk ball with you guys, I'm here. So appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.